Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to a Mel Gibson podcast. Today we hug the cactus with the great Craig Cohen. Welcome, Craig.
Hey,
Thanks for
Seco,
being
how's it
here.
going? And I guess I don't know if apologize is the right word here, or just I'll take the credit for this one or the blame for this one. I know when you were putting together this new season of the Mel Gibson podcast, I guess you were taking suggestions, and
Mhm.
I threw Machete Kills out there, and I haven't seen Machete Kills since 2013, the first time I saw it. And I got a little nervous because the first half of the movie, we don't get much Mel, and I was like, "Oh man, Seiko's gonna kill me." But thankfully, that second half we get a lot of Mel, and it's some good stuff.
He makes more than make up for being the jaws of the first half.
Yeah,
Yeah, evil Mel. We get evil Bond villain Mel in this one. It's excellent. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, actually, this was one of the cornerstones of the season because I knew from day one we have to cover this. So I sort of built the rest of the season around this one. This is fun season. This is Mel having fun in front of the camera. I also share the Patriot in that one because I'm
Oh
covering Patriot with Doug, and I also consider that a comedy. It's
man,
because
that's a polarizing movie, Seiko. I know people may or may not know we sort of have a last of the action heroes sort of uh chat group that
mm-hmm,
goes on behind the scenes,
mm-hmm.
and I know that movie has inspired a lot of chatter within the last of the action hero hosting community. So I'm
Absolutely.
sure that's going to be a polarizing episode.
As I am a polarizing podcaster and Mel Gibson is a polarizing subject. So, hey, what can I say? You guys are the rice, I'm the spice.
Real
So,
quick, I guess before we get too deep in it, this
mhm.
is through the lens of 2022. This is a polarizing movie because
Oh,
you've
yes.
got you've got Mel, who's never really fully recovered from the problems he had a dozen years ago at this point.
Hmm.
He sort of settled into the career that he's going to have now, probably for the remainder of his career. But you've also got Amber Heard,
Oh,
who we
oh,
just went through the whole Johnny Depp trial with. And
yes.
then at the end of the movie, we get a surprise cameo that I didn't even remember, and probably because in 2013 I didn't know who the guy was.
Hmm.
And I guess we'll get to that when we get to that part of the movie. But man, watching this movie in 2022, there was a lot where I was like, man, in 2013, people had no idea, myself included.
Yeah, Robert Rodriguez sure can't pick him.
uh, the thing I like about this movie, Seiko, more than the first Machete is, I
Hmm.
think most people know that Machete sort of developed from that fake Grindhouse trailer on the movie Grindhouse that
Yes.
that Tarantino and Rodriguez did together. So
Hmm.
when it was time to make Machete, Rodriguez sort of had to build a movie around that trailer,
Hmm.
which handcuffed him a little bit, I think. And then also, he didn't direct the first Machete. So I think right out of the gate, you had two problems.
Hmm.
And the thing I like about Machete Kills is Rodriguez is sort of not handcuffed by a trailer concept. And also, he's directing. And when
Hmm.
Rodriguez directs a movie, you can tell he's directing a movie.
Oh, absolutely. It does not get more schlock when Robert Rodriguez is directing.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned Mel's sort of Bond villain type approach to the role.
Hmm.
This movie, and it's so funny. After I watched this, I was so inspired by the feel of it. I actually popped in a Bond movie and watched just a random Bond movie because this really was like Rodriguez making a schlocky sort of B grindhousey type of Bond movie with Machete as Bond. And
Yes,
and I mean, man,
the
I
Mexican
wish they
Bond,
yeah, I
really.
wish they made more films like this, man. I really do.
So do I. I feel bereft that he never made the Machete Kills again in
In space.
space.
Yeah. Was so when did you first see this?
Tuesday.
Okay, awesome.
I came
Nice.
to it a virgin.
actually, like I said, I haven't watched this since 2013, and I actually had a really cool theatrical experience with this one. It was before I moved to Las Vegas. I was coming here on vacations,
Mm-hmm.
and I discovered a multiplex drive-in that we have here in North Las Vegas. It's got 4 or 5 screens, and there's different parking based on the movie you're going to watch. And of course,
And
if
there's
you're
slot
watching
machines every five meters.
no, it's one of the few areas in town where there's no slot machines. And of course, you can watch other movies, but you're parked directly
So
in
it's in
front of this.
Boulder then.
Well, it's North Las Vegas, so
Right.
yeah. And of course, drive-ins have changed a lot. You tune in your radio. So I saw this with a double feature of Where the Millers, which was a
Oh,
really weird double feature.
that was weird.
And the other thing I liked about it is at the drive-in, you're able to just bring food in. I mean, I'm sure they don't encourage it, but so I don't know if you're aware of a chain here in the States called Del Taco. It's
I'm sure I passed it once or twice.
yeah, it's a fast serve concept,
Taco place.
Americanized. Yeah. So I stopped, I got a bunch of tacos, some burritos, and I
Oh.
watched Machete Kills on the drive-in, which this is a perfect drive-in movie.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, this completely fits the pulpy tradition that Tarantino and Rodriguez made. It
Mhm.
just fits right into the wheelhouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a perfect Rodriguez movie. Whether you enjoy a Rodriguez movie is a different story. I happen to like Rodriguez's movies because I fell in love with Rodriguez when he made El Mariachi.
Yeah.
After I saw that, I was a Rodriguez guy for life.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Robert Rodriguez is his movies are so harmless. I mean, there's like nothing he ever does in his movies is done with any kind of malice. It's all, with the concept, is this going to look cool?
Yeah.
Or is it a cool concept?
Is it
I
fun?
mean, yeah, exactly. And I mean, the one thing I've always appreciated about Rodriguez is he's never lost that sort of energy he had as a film fan, because he was a film fan before he was a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
And he's carried that through his career. And I'm admittedly, I'm not a fan of everything he's done. But again, I've always appreciated sort of the fact that you can see his love for the medium when you're watching the movie. And again, there's never a moment of malice in his films. It's always,
True.
you can clearly see he there's some filmmakers you're like, wow, you can sort of tell they hate something.
Yeah.
They either hate the fact they're making the movie they're making, they hate their audience.
They're being a bitch.
Yeah, exactly. And Rodriguez is never like that.
Nope.
And
he's just there to entertain.
yeah,
First of all, I think he's just like his first audience member. He's there to entertain himself in the first place, and he has good instincts. So inevitably, his insanity translates well to screen, as it did with this movie. I enjoyed it. I thought it was really, really, really fun. You cannot take it seriously. You cannot worry about plot. You cannot worry about consistency. You cannot worry about anything. It's just a ride. You get on it. It's a theme park, so the food is going to be cheap. The drinks are going to be spilled. But all in all, you're having a good time because it throws everything at you but the kitchen sink. In fact, it might even throw the kitchen sink at you for effect.
And you know what? I didn't even mention while we were talking about sort of, polarizing people in this movie. We've got the introduction of Carlos Estevez, aka
Sheen.
Charlie Sheen.
My main man. I love Charlie Sheen. I think
he almost steals his movie. I mean,
he's so much fun. And this was at the height of his
Tiger Blood.
There you go. At that point, he was like, wasn't he wielding some kind of sword when he got kicked out of 2.5 Men? He was on a balcony, and he was at war with the studio, and he was like waving a sword around. I kind of imagined that was Machete's thing.
There was a point with Charlie Sheen where I just had to tune it out because he got to be too much. I mean, if you think about it, he really is, I guess in a bad way, an innovator in terms of bad boy celebrities in sort of the age of social media. or I mean, he probably helped make TMZ's sort of ratings for quite a few weeks.
Oh, he made a lot of people a lot of money in various ways, and his disgrace is probably the biggest one.
Yeah, but man, I mean, it's always funny when you don't see somebody on screen for a long time, and then you see them pop up in a movie. Like I said, in my opinion, he just about steals the movie. And you know who else I loved seeing? And this is kind of what I love about Rodriguez and Tarantino.
They're stable actors.
Yeah, William Sadler.
Awesome. I loved him. He was perfectly cast as the evil corrupt sheriff.
Yeah, I mean, William Sadler's a guy. I mean, you may or may not see a lot.
Another Bond trope, by the way.
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's not an accident. We should have had Jack on this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that's probably the biggest complaint you can probably have about this movie, Seiko, is I think it might be 10 minutes too long, and he does have a tendency in this movie to sort of throw every character that he, I guess, was playing with at that time into the movie. So you get some characters that really don't advance the plot per se. I mean,
it's just like Planet Terror.
Yeah,
it really is. You get scenes that are just there because he has the right people to make the scene work, and the scene works, but it just has no business in the movie. And
yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, you could argue, the whole point of the Chameleon. It's because he's like, oh, I've got Walt Goggins, I've got Cuba Gooding Jr., I've got Lady Gaga.
He adds nothing. It adds nothing to the plot. It's completely meaningless. It has no stakes. It has no consequences.
But it does have a great joke payoff.
It's immense.
A Canadian Mexican? I mean, what a brilliant, punchline to a joke that runs through that whole movie with the Chameleon. But I mean, that's probably my biggest complaint about this movie is it had a tendency to just feel a little like it went just a little too long.
You could argue it's self-referential to the genre too much.
Oh yeah,
There are too many in-jokes. If you're not a real Rodriguez aficionado, if you're not into like his style of movie making and basically what he's channeling, then a lot of stuff is not going to land. And I think the main problem, and that's why this movie wasn't a success, sadly, is in the end, he was making the movie for himself. He didn't have an audience in mind because there's no particular audience he's catering to. You could say, well, it's catering to Mexican Americans. Maybe, I don't know. There's too much stuff in there where he's just basically taking the piss at Mexicans, so in many ways this is kind of the first modern movie in terms of we make a movie and we don't care about our audience. We're making the movie because we feel this movie is important to us.
Yeah,
and that's a slippery slope. The Marvel movies went down, and things like Ghostbusters went down, and a lot of IPs went down. You could arguably say that this is one of the first ones that maybe he could have thought about, who am I making this movie for? And then more people would have shown up because there's enough in here to show up for. Yeah.
I mean, the other good point there is, I think the fact that he was able to make this movie without a lot of sort of, I guess, interference is the fact that, granted, it didn't set the box office on fire, and it didn't have a great theatrical run, but it cost around $20 million to make. And in 2013, even a $20 million movie, that's a bargain.
That's almost indie money.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, when you're not spending a lot of money, people have a tendency to get out of your way because they're not as concerned about the return on their investment. And the other thing is, I'm not sure there's a lot of filmmakers that could have made this movie for $20 million and have it look the way it did. And that's another thing that Robert Rodriguez is.
He does make stuff look like $1 million.
Yeah. And then also he's able to call in, actors that he gets Jessica Alba for probably 2 days. He gets, I forgot the girl that plays Sofia Vergara's daughter, Vanessa something, I think her name is.
Yeah. It probably means more to you than she does to me.
Yeah, but I mean, like, these are actors that,
the chick who got killed and thrown out of the helicopter.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, those are people that, it was probably a matter of Rodriguez picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, you want to have, come down to Austin or whatever for 2 days and have some fun."
And they were gung ho for it.
Whereas, a lot of those people would have been like, "Oh, you want me in your movie? Here's my rate or whatever."
Yeah, Lady Gaga was gagging for it and desperate, and I'm sure she would have been in every scene, and was probably there at 5:30, and was one of those people who just wouldn't leave the set when they were done. Please give me another scene. Please write me more. You can tell.
Mm-hmm. Do you like sort of even the intro of this movie was kind of very Bondy in that you have, especially the later Bond movies kind of started to do this where. I kind of like the old Bond movies where for the most part, the opening sequence wouldn't have anything to do with the rest of the movie.
No,
well, funnily enough, the movie I watched after this was Diamonds Are Forever, which has a Vegas connection, of course.
Obviously.
And I'm contradicting myself here because the beginning of that movie kind of ties in with the rest of the movie in that you have Blofeld in the opening.
It does. You have, that's right.
But the thing about this is, it kind of sets it up where you get the opening sequence that tangentially ties to the rest of the movie. And
right.
Did you like seeing sort of the Lucha Libre masked Mel in the beginning where you don't get the full reveal, but it's him?
Oh yeah, it's him. I especially, and no, I was kind of tickled by the whole Lucha Libre thing anyway, knowing, because I've seen this movie so late, basically. Yeah. I know that he filmed 2 seasons of a Lucha Libre reality show.
Oh yeah,
right?
What was that called?
He had like an Action Network,
the El Rey Network, yeah,
El Rey Network, and he had a wrestling show.
That show was great. I loved it.
I would love the El Rey Network because it was all action.
Yeah.
And I'm still desperate for an action streaming service. It just isn't there.
Yeah.
I want my action heroes. I want my westerns. I want action stuff. I just want to turn on a streaming service where I can just watch Charles Bronson movies nonstop.
Yeah.
It just isn't there.
You know what? I'm surprised that like Lionsgate hasn't done like a streaming channel. You don't even have to be creative with the title anymore. You just put plus after it, call it done. Lionsgate Plus, because Lionsgate has a pretty deep. Well, that's the other thing nowadays, Seiko, is rights change hands so frequently. You have no idea who even owns a movie anymore, even
no, except when it's Rocky.
Yeah.
We know who owns that and who will own it in perpetuity.
Not to get off track here.
No, but we were discussing controversial topics we are having on the podcast chat. Well, the biggest controversial topic, of course, is, should Stallone own the rights to Rocky? And interesting. He's a bad businessman. He just simply is a bad businessman. There's a reason he went bankrupt. And then you have Mel Gibson, who isn't a bad businessman. He acts because, well, I think it's more of a outlet for him. It's a kind of a hobby. He doesn't have the kind of proclivities where he's like going off the deep end with losing money left and right. He just doesn't. He's fine.
Well, the other thing is there was never a Mel Gibson brand. And,
True.
I mean, there was Schwarzenegger for a period of time was a brand. Stallone was a brand.
Yeah.
I guess you could argue that even Bruce Willis was a brand. And I mean, the three of them were the faces of Planet Hollywood.
Yeah.
So, Mel never really got.
They asked. I'm sure they asked. He's just too smart for it. And it's like, no.
But you know what else,
Thanks so
Nico?
much.
Like, a lot of the time, when you're doing something like that, you're playing with other people's money. But I guess at the same time, maybe if you're respectful of other people's money, you're not just going to take it knowing it's a bad idea.
Yep. Well, I just saw the Black Friday deals for Stallone Shop. We're getting a 25% discount on Rocky's sweater.
Oh, yeah.
Which is 75% overpriced.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure Sly makes up his own prices. He's very hands-on with that, I bet, because he has no conception of what prices are in society. That's why a meet and greet costs like $500-600 with him.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. I just saw that he's doing one of those evening with in Los Angeles.
Oh, he's doing one of those again, huh? Great.
Yeah, and I looked at the tickets and I was like, "Yep, okay."
Yeah. Mel just did one in Edinburgh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend, which was depressing, but I did see the video of it. I'm on the Mel Gibson fan pages, and someone posted it, so it was great. It was kind of fun because he's kind of like Scotland's favorite son.
Yeah.
Even though he made Braveheart. So here we have Machete Kills.
Mhm.
And so, of course, the main character, Machete, is Danny Trejo, who is another polarizing figure in the movie business, because, of course, he's an ex-felon. And he has a checkered past, as they say. But he's one of the most awesome guys in movies ever. Let's face facts.
Yeah, and he's
I just love Danny. I think he's I think he's fantastic.
He is, and he's got a tremendous autobiography. I don't know if you're aware of it. Or if
he has one, I should definitely read it then.
Yeah, and you know what? It's so strange. His co-author is Donal Logue, who is an actor you probably know. He was Stephen Dorff's like right-hand man in Blade.
Right.
Yeah,
that guy.
He co-wrote the book with Trejo.
Interesting.
And it is great. It is such a good read. Man, Trejo lived it, man. Every single line on his face is earned. And man,
I was just gonna say that
he's a legit dude. And it's so funny, you know. I think the first time I ever saw him that I was aware it was Danny Trejo was, of course, Desperado.
Oh, yes.
I know he had popped up in movies before then.
Sure.
And he was actually really good friends with Eddie Bunker, who was in Reservoir Dogs.
Sure.
And they were both, you know,
Mr. White.
Ex-felons together. So he had some kind of, you know, career prior to the Rodriguez, but Rodriguez really elevated him. And then also, of course, I guess his two big breakouts were probably Desperado and then Heat, right?
Heat. Yeah. He was a big part of Heat.
Yeah.
That was a really cool part.
Yeah. Not to spoil Heat for anybody who's listening to this that some miraculously hasn't seen Heat, which is arguably one of the greatest, you know, sort of guy movies of the last, you know, 25 years.
The movie that saved the 90s.
Yeah. There is a featurette, I guess, on maybe the second to last Blu-ray they did, where they go to all the locations from the movie. And they go to the house where Trejo's character is found. You know, he's like beaten up. And they actually peel back the carpet and the blood stain is still on the floor. Wow. Like they didn't, like whoever bought the house, they were like, no, we're going to keep this.
We're going to keep Danny Trejo's blood.
It's part of Hollywood history, but yeah. No, I mean, I arguably haven't seen a lot of Trejo's more recent work just because they're paycheck films, you know.
Yeah, like everything else. I mean, we grew up with straight to video.
Yeah.
They made an effort.
Yes, well, that's the key point.
Despite having a shitty low budget, they made an effort to tell a good story, to make a cool movie, to have a hero you could get behind. These days, they're just putting out stuff based on a brand name, and you're better off not watching it.
Oh, absolutely. And the other thing is, a lot of times they've already made their money before the movie's even been made. It's like you can look at the Bruce Willis factory before he announced his retirement. They were putting Bruce into these movies, selling the foreign rights, and they would have made their money back before they even shot the film. So then why even bother at that point?
There's
You've
no
got a
incentive
movie.
to actually make a good movie then.
Yeah, you've already made the movie. You've already made your money back. You're selling it on a poster concept, and the movie is completely secondary. There's a group of people out there, Seiko, that sort of, I don't know if they ironically like these movies or they're just sort of, sadists. But I just don't get it. I mean, I'm trying to remember one of the Bruce Willis sort of paycheck movies that I
Doesn't
sat
See
through.
Made?
Yeah, and
Please.
yeah, it's one of those ones where you watch it and I'm just like, I can't see it. I mean, I understand, the whole, so bad it's good type of concepts, but
it's
the
not.
worst thing a movie can do, in my opinion, and this is when people talk about the worst movies ever made. My main argument is always, if the movie isn't boring, it's done its job. And that's why people throw around the, Plan 9 from Outer Space all the time when they're talking about worst movies of all time. Plan 9 from Outer Space is entertaining as hell. So right out of the gate, you can't call it the worst movie ever made because it is a fun movie to watch and it's short. When a movie feels like it's twice the length it is when you're watching it, that's when we can start talking about worst movies ever made.
Yep. So here we have Machete Kills. So Machete is captured by some sheriff and he's being hung, which is a ridiculous scene. So he's just hanging there and he's not dying because Machete apparently can't die. He's some kind of
my goodness,
super
it's
zombie.
so great. Yeah, it's so great where you just see the eyes tracking him back and
tracking
forth.
him across the room. And then, of course, the president calls. And okay, so they shoot the rope. So, and he doesn't fall. He just lands on his feet like boom.
Badass.
Machete doesn't fall. Machete lands on his feet. And those guys have a grudge. So, of course, at some point when he's trying to get back into the United States as an American citizen, because that's what's promised to him, that's apparently a motivating thing.
Yeah.
I doubt that motivated Machete at all, because I don't think he gives a flying fuck about being an American. But he has his intrinsic motivation to save the world. That somehow motivates him, because, that saves Machete too. So then he's motivated.
Yeah, because at that point, he doesn't even know that, was it Vox? Was that Mel's character's name?
That's
Vox?
Mel's character, yes.
Yeah. At that point, he doesn't even know that Vox is the one that killed Jessica Alba.
He doesn't.
No, so he doesn't learn that until way towards the end of the movie. So that's even funnier.
Yeah. That's a Easter egg.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess
not a plot hole. It's an Easter egg.
Yeah. So there's missiles pointed at Washington.
Yes.
And that's the whole incentive to bring Machete in. And
that's we're going to ask $100 million.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
But the other thing that's cool about this is we sort of get like a John Carpenter influence a couple of times in this movie. And one of them is sort of we'll clear your record, Snake Plissken, Escape from New York style.
It was screaming Escape from New York, especially getting over the wall. And
well, and then even when we get the ticking clock later in the movie, there was a lot of Escape from New York or John Carpenter type nods in this movie, including the music at certain points, which I absolutely love. Anytime that John Carpenter gets the rub, if you will, I'm all for it.
So am I. Because John Carpenter is brilliant. He should have made more action movies, because Big Trouble in Little China is still my favorite movie ever.
Right on.
Yeah. But here we have a movie written by Robert Rodriguez, produced by Robert Rodriguez, directed by Robert Rodriguez, soundtrack by Robert Rodriguez. It's a minor,
as well.
Yeah. It's a minor miracle he isn't starring in.
Yeah. That's another thing he's been smart with. He knows
he can't act.
He knows where it ends. Yes.
He knows he can't act. That's a good thing. you could try to explain the plot, but there's no point in following the plot.
Yeah, I mean, it's just basically the plot is an excuse to get him from action set piece to action set piece, and
Precisely.
we're introduced to his handler, played by Amber Heard, who's
Yes.
Miss San Antonio, which is her
Amber
cover.
Heard when she was still hot, right?
And still fairly. This might be her best movie I've seen her in, because
Sure.
if you watch her in Aquaman, it's one of the worst performances ever. Wooden, just nothing there. Here,
I suspect she was already a drunk by then.
Maybe. But I mean, you get some great scenes with her here, and the fight between her and Michelle Rodriguez at the end.
That's really enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great dialogue there. It's a pretty well staged girl fight, if you will.
Sure.
Yeah, it's
I love the part where she just rams the knife into her dress.
Yeah,
slices the dress down.
Yeah, to get more mobility.
Yeah, right.
And that's after we've had Robert Rodriguez rip himself off. He loved the gunfighter with the blind gunfighter concept so much from Once Upon a Time in Mexico. He did it again with Michelle Rodriguez. But yeah, I mean, this is,
as I said, a little too self-referential.
Yeah, but really, this is just a setup to get him to all the different set pieces we need, because so he gets with his handler. We learn that he has to go to Acapulco to get at that point they think it's the resistance guy that's got the missiles pointed on Washington.
Yes, the revolutionary, who is also the head of the cartel.
Yeah,
and he's the revolutionary and a head of a cartel in the same person, because he has multiple personalities. And we learn later he's also a secret agent working for the government as a third personality. And the reason why he's a evil cartel guy is because he was traumatized by seeing the death of his family. Then he went nuts.
Only in a Rodriguez
sort of
movie.
Well, don't think about that too much. What part of his personality is speaking currently? The actor doesn't really care. He's just sort of phoning that in. I mean, he's basically playing the same guy in every scene. So there's no real difference between the revolutionary and.
Well, it's funny because Machete even asks him. He says, who am I talking to right now?
Yeah.
And then we get a very Carpenter-esque moment where he has wired the missile into his heart. So if his heart stops, the missiles will launch, or the missiles would be activated.
Yes.
Which adds a whole nother layer of complexity to this whole story for Machete, because now he can't just kill the guy and disable the bomb or the missile. Of course
the guy is dead. And Mel Gibson has the guy's heart in a little encasing to keep it pumping. The ticking clock gets a little slow at one point. It does.
I could have sworn there was a moment where they have like 4 hours left and we have a whole overnight period.
I think they paused it at some point.
Yeah, but man, you get at this, it's like an Aztec pyramid on a mountain or a hill overlooking the water in Acapulco. You got some great action beats here. You've got the baddie, sort of sidekick.
Yeah,
who we learn later on is just
the guy who gets cloned 20 times. And
you get a great couple of fights between him and Machete. The first where he basically disembowels him and then uses disembowels him and throws his sort of intestines up into the blades of a helicopter.
Yes, and then he gets dragged into the helicopter.
We've got a couple of helicopter.
This movie has the greatest helicopter gags ever thought of.
Yeah. Well, and then we get
there's
the
like
other
this one part where basically Machete has this little what is it? It's kind of like a fish line, kind of a grapple hook fish line kind of thing. And so he throws that into the helicopter, and it gets lifted off the ground and decapitates all his enemies.
And then we've also got the speedboat one where he launches.
And the fun part about that is, it's CGI, but it looks really cool.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. I think a lot of times filmmakers will either it'll be really shitty CGI and it, or
Yeah, this is where the money went.
well, yeah, but also I Rodriguez really likes to do this, the green screen shooting,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it adds a certain flavor to his movies because it's almost like that hyper reality. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can tell you're watching a movie, but you're okay with it. And we've had discussions about CGI before, Zico, so
Sure.
everybody knows where we stand on that. But
Mm-hmm.
I just think here, it's again, a lot of times it's not the tool, it's the person using the tool, right?
Yes. Understanding what it is, understanding it is a tool and
Yeah.
not what carries your movie. Lazy filmmakers or lazy production companies just use CGI as a device to build a little dialogue around,
Yeah.
and we call that Marvel or the DCU, EU, or what have you.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I mean,
kids movies.
yeah. Well, the interesting thing about that is, and I guess we could have a whole nother discussion if we really wanted to, but
Mm,
a lot of times with these Marvel movies, and I've got a couple Marvel movies on my shelf. There's,
there's some
probably
good ones.
phase one and phase two are probably,
Sure.
the movies I'm going to skew towards.
Captain
But it got to the
America, Winter
yeah,
Soldier,
yeah,
Iron Man 1 and
the first
2.
Iron Man. Oh my goodness!
Amazing.
But it got to a point where with Marvel, the director became less and less important because a lot of times it'd be like, okay, you're coming on to direct this movie, but the climax of the movie has already been prevised,
Mm-hmm.
so it's done.
Yes, the aliens are going to invade the Earth and destroy everything. And we're going to have the climactic scene where the superheroes are going to get this 360 pan shots while the
Yeah.
aliens are coming in. And basically, that's what's selling the movie. No, it isn't.
Well, I mean,
It's still the story. You buy a
yeah,
comic book to read a story. You're not buying it for one panel that looks cool.
yeah.
And
But I
that's
think
something the
that's
movies didn't understand when they started making comic book movies. And that's something Rodriguez does understand because, yes, he has these great set piece stills that make for great epic movie scenes. But he does understand that you have to have motivated characters and you have to like them. You have to enjoy them. And he
mhm.
makes everything in every scene fun. It is just a really fun movie. I haven't seen a movie this much fun in ages.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah. I mean,
sorry I didn't see it in 2013, to be honest.
I
Mm,
think the thing is, there's certain filmmakers that sort of keep or they retain that sort of they remember what it's like to be 12 years old when they're making a film,
yeah.
regardless of what that film is.
Mm.
And Rodriguez is one of those dudes. Um,
Yes, and
I
the thing is, there is a depth to his filmmaking, but it's a very Spanish style of filmmaking where you have a lot of absurdity woven into the storyline and woven into the way they present the movie and tell the story, where you have like this kind of almost mystical way of telling the story.
mhm.
And you see that a lot with Pedro Almodovar. You see it a lot with Julio Menem. You see it a lot with other Spanish filmmakers, and you also see that with Rodriguez. There is a very sensitive, emotional undercurrent to everything he does. There's a lot of depth to it,
Mhm.
but what you're being presented with is something very superficial. So you tend to focus on that.
Mhm.
But there is a emotional thread running through the movie,
Yeah,
or a
yeah,
lack thereof in terms of Machete, because Machete is just completely unemotional. He's the ultimate anti-hero.
yeah,
He gives
yeah,
zero fucks. And that's what Rodriguez loves. And
yeah.
to an extent, same with Tarantino. That's what Tarantino loves.
Hmm.
Have the
Hmm.
cool hero, unperturbed, the
Yeah.
Charles Bronson.
So it's about 50. I think I checked my counter on the on the TV when Mel finally shows up for real.
Yeah,
It's about what 48 minutes into an hour and 47-minute long movie.
pretty much. Yes.
Yeah.
When
But
finally Mel takes the stage.
and then we get, I mean, he's in it for a good portion from that point on.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
we get sort of the classic, I guess you want to call it like an 80s sort of trope. It's a Bond trope for sure, but like the
Mm-hmm.
whole building a spaceship to leave Earth because Earth is doomed.
Yes. And he's going to make sure it's doomed. And he didn't tell anybody. And then you have the reveal that he's actually the mastermind behind the end of the Earth. And they turn that entire thing around and they turn it into a gag. It's fantastic. In many ways, this builds on Austin Powers. Austin Powers spoofed Bond in the most effective way. Rodriguez took a look at that and said, I'm going to put a little Rodriguez twist on this. And he does. It's really fun to watch. I really enjoyed how Mel was utilized. There's no redemption in his character. He remains evil.
Yeah.
And his real motivations aren't really explained. Yes, he's clairvoyant, apparently. He can see the future because of some weird accident, because of some... And that's why he's such a brilliant inventor, because he basically... it's kind of like if we had Back to the Future, right? And we would have like the DeLorean, and we knew about the future, and we could go back to 1955 and introduce gadgets there. We would be brilliant. We would be the Elon Musk or the Steve Jobs of that time. When in reality, we're just getting gadgets from the future. And he, in the movie, that's what he does. He has sort of a clairvoyance, so he can see future inventions. That's sort of how they explain it. It doesn't make any sense. When you're like a sci-fi nerd, you poke holes in it, it just won't stand up to scrutiny, but it is fun. It is cute.
Yeah.
Kind of, well, okay.
It was an excuse to showcase the Inside Out gun, right?
Right. The Inside Out gun. Remember the movie Doom?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Where like the last
the Rock movie
30 minutes
Doom.
is a point of view video game shot.
Yeah. And The Rock thought this was going to be his great franchise, and he thought this is going to make my career, and it was the most boring thing ever.
Yeah.
And he had the BFG in it, right? And that was like one of the main things in the movie. He gets the BFG. That's a big thing. When in reality, when you're in a game, yes, because you work for it. But when it's just presented to you, it's boring, and that's something they didn't understand. Whereas in this movie, Rodriguez understands how to create a MacGuffin like that. Right?
Yeah.
It's fantastic because it backfires, because it kills the guy who's supposed to dismantle the bomb in the heart that is encased in the case to stop the rockets from going off to destroy Washington. So it works out really well.
Yeah.
It's actually more important than the Chameleon.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
Which is still, we've talked not enough about how much fun the actors had with playing the Chameleon. We haven't talked about that enough. I mean, remember No Country for Old Men?
Yeah.
Really, when you think about it, this is No Country for Old Men spoofed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the sort of super serious, I'm here to take care of business assassin.
Yes.
And
a professional hitman.
Yeah.
And you can't see my face. So, you're a witness now, so I'm just gonna kill you.
Is Walt Goggins the true face of the Chameleon?
No. I don't think you ever see him.
Yeah, but why does it use Walt Goggins' voice most of the time?
Yeah, that's a little odd, isn't it?
But yeah, I mean, you could tell that this was an idea that Rodriguez had. He had actors that were on board to do it. And he was like, I don't think I'm ever going to have another movie to make this happen. So we'll just shoehorn it into Machete.
Exactly. It'll work. It'll be fun. And it is fun. One of the reasons I'm going to watch Machete Kills again is because of the crazy killer.
Yeah.
Who pulls off his rubber mask and reveals the next actor, ultimately revealing Lady Gaga.
Yeah. I mean,
And then
everybody
finally
there.
Antonio Banderas.
Yeah, with a fake mustache.
With a fake mustache.
But I gotta say,
who gets killed by a bunch of rednecks.
Yeah. After, because he makes the mistake of saying he's Canadian.
There you go.
But Walt Goggins, I mean, anytime you see Walt Goggins on screen, he's another one of those dudes.
He was like my favorite guy from that show.
Vice Principals?
Shield, right? He was on the Shield.
Okay. Okay.
He was basically driving force in the Shield because killing him broke up the Shield.
Yeah. The amazing thing about Walt Goggins is he's excelled in both fields. You talk about the Shield. He was also on that show Justified,
right,
with Timothy Olyphant, where he played basically the antagonist in that show. But then he did all this Danny McBride stuff where he did Vice Principals. He did
he was in Tarantino.
Yeah, The Righteous Gemstones. I don't know if you've seen The Righteous Gemstones or not, but like
I have.
He's got this ability to do comedy really, really, really well, and then also do the serious roles as well.
He's immensely versatile.
Yeah, I mean it's really rare that you can succeed in both.
And the fun part is he's worked with really good directors. I mean, he worked with Tarantino, Rodriguez, he worked with a bunch of people, and they all know it. Yeah, they know his star value isn't that high, but they know that this is just tremendous actor.
Yeah, well, and that gets back to like sort of the Tarantino sort of philosophy of casting and getting, the absolute most bang for your buck.
Yeah,
and he's, it's probably, there's probably more myth than fact there, but that's like, hey, John Travolta's, rate wasn't that high when we were getting ready to make Pulp Fiction.
Right.
But John Travolta is still a tremendous actor. Put on Blowout, watch those performances. He's a guy that can deliver. And then the same thing with Jackie Brown. You got Robert Forrester. It's like
same with Bruce Willis.
Exactly.
If Stallone had some balls, he would have been in Pulp Fiction. Of course, he wouldn't have been because he was under a fat contract from Warner Brothers and he was getting tons of money to play really shitty movies.
Yeah, well,
but if he'd had a 1 ounce of sense, he would have been in Pulp Fiction for scale money. That character would have launched him, not in action movies. It would have launched him into the kind of movies he's meant to play.
Oh, sure. But it would have torpedoed Tarantino's budget as well.
Yeah, no, he would have. Stallone would have had to accept scale because all his actors accept scale. If you want to work with Tarantino, wake up to the fact Tarantino is the real star of this thing.
Yeah.
You don't get to write your own lines, Sly. I'm sorry. Yeah. You read mine.
But that's sort of like Walt Goggins is the perfect sort of bang for your buck actor.
Exactly. He can do
there's
everything.
Just enough. There's just enough recognition there. People are going to see him and know who he is, even if they're not 100% sure who he is. And he's going to turn in a performance that kills. And then you've got Cuba Gooding Jr., who I don't know what happened with.
What happened? Well, the parts dried up because other actors basically got his stuff. But
was it an Oscar curse?
Probably,
because a lot of times
isn't that usually the case?
Well, I mean, if you look at like Mira Sorvino, that happened with Marissa Tomei.
Marissa Tomei. Which is disgraceful because Marissa Tomei is so underutilized.
Yeah, well, watch her in The Wrestler or Cuba Gooding Jr. Same thing. Like after Jerry Maguire, you thought that he would have been like had a rocket strapped to his back, but
he should have had.
He made that movie with that Skeet Ulrich movie with that was like a ticking time bomb movie. Where they had didn't they have something that was going to blow up that was in like an ice cream truck? I
forget. I remember him from Pearl Harbor.
Oh yeah, he was the boxer in Pearl Harbor.
Why are you in that, Cuba? You're way too good for this part. Why are you in a movie with that director? Why? Oh, I don't know. He did a really good job.
I like Michael Bay, by the way.
Oh, sure.
I think Michael Bay is another one of those guys that remembers what it's like to be 12 years. Yeah, he remembers what it's like to be 12 years old.
Yeah,
But
well,
he also has that marketing background, which I think has always sort of driven his work a little bit. Let's see. Chill Factor.
oh sure,
That's the movie I'm thinking of
yeah, no, I
with
remember.
Skeet Ulrich. They're forced to protect a deadly chemical weapon from the hands of a group of mercenary planning to sell it to the highest bidder. I really feel
Sounds
like there's
painful to watch.
but either way, we get him for like 4 minutes in this movie, and you remember, you say, "Wow, I wish I saw Cuba Gooding Jr. more." Lady
Yeah, Cuba
Gaga,
Gooding Jr. left everybody wanting more.
yeah, I know you said
Lady
Lady Gaga.
Gaga left everybody wanting less of her.
I thought she was fine though.
Yeah, she's
Um,
okay, I
yeah,
guess. You know,
uh,
but I think Lady Gaga as a singer and as a actress and as a performer is way overrated because she's just copying other people. It's a sign of the times.
yeah, but you know what? The one thing I have to
She's
that
kind
I'll
of a
always,
mix between Cher and Madonna and Barbara Streisand and those people. It's like, okay, we see your influences. The thing is, there's very little originality about you.
yeah.
Stop copying those people. And that's what she's doing in this movie. It's like, well, she's being a lot of things, but she's not very original. And that's why she's not very memorable. And that's why she has kind of, in wrestling terms, go away heat.
Yeah. The one thing I will always appreciate her for, though, is her reverence for performers that came before her. All the work she's done with Tony Bennett.
Yeah,
Um,
I like that stuff. That's cool.
yeah. And there was an award show, too, where she presented with an older actress who had been out of the limelight for a while. And just the care with which she approached that whole interaction, you could tell that she was like, I'm helping this person.
Yeah, she's not a
Um,
dick.
Yeah, which is easy to do. Uh, and then from Lady Gaga, we get Antonio Banderas, who you can't say
The
enough
great
about
Antonio
that dude.
Banderas, who you cannot say enough about. The irony is that after I saw this, I watched two recent Pedro Almodovar movies because he went back to working with Pedro,
Yeah,
and it's just such great stuff. I
yeah.
mean, I've always loved Banderas in a Pedro Almodovar movie. It's just amazing. From the first one to the last one, they just gel together.
He is such a charismatic actor.
I knew it from the
Um,
first time I saw that. I think the Spanish title is Atame, which is the English version is Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down,
okay,
where a extremely young Antonio Banderas kidnaps a porn actress, ties her up, hence Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down, and then she starts to work on him. She's drug addicted, so he has to score drugs for her, and he gets into all kinds of problems because he explains to her, "Look, I'm just tying you up because I want to keep you here because I want to get you clean, and because I'm in love with you, and we're gonna be happy together." And she's like, "No, no, 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 that's not happening. You're gonna get me heroin," and that's the kind of the premise of the movie. And he gets like horribly beat up, and it's really cute. It's one of Pedro Almodovar's best. It's
mm.
one of the earliest movies, and it really launched Banderas.
He's another actor you watch on screen and you can tell that he's having fun.
He
And
has fun. He's immensely talented. And one of those guys who's like kind of gone under the radar and has been underutilized. Although I love him in The 13th Warrior.
oh my
It's
goodness, yeah,
yeah, it's one of those movies I really want to cover for the network. The 13th Warrior is just so awesome. It's one of
yeah.
in my opinion, Michael Crichton's best scripts.
I know this technique had been used. I think it was the first time I really saw it in use and was like, this is the perfect way to do it, where you transitioned from the language they're supposed to be speaking
Mm-hmm.
to English.
Exactly.
And
Done
I know they
right.
did it. I think they did it in the Hunt for Red October. I
Sure.
know they did it in that Tom Cruise movie Valkyrie.
Yes.
Um,
But
and it's just
they've never done it in the way that it's done in the 13th Warrior, where
mhm,
you can actually see a progression where it's kind of logical, understandable that at some point he grasps enough of the language
mhm,
thanks to linguistic ability because
yeah,
he's educated that he grasps enough of the language that he can make himself understood. But throughout the movie, they keep adding because it's brilliantly directed. They keep adding little stuff, so there's still a culture barrier, and I
yeah.
I love that movie for that. And I actually read the original book, and
Was it called the Sin Eaters?
Yeah, the Sin Eaters. Yeah.
Yeah. The end of this movie is really what, like a 30-minute, just action free for all.
Yes. And that's probably one of the reasons why the movie didn't do so well. The ending is open and the ending is unsatisfying.
Yeah.
Because they're basically setting up for the sequel that never happens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the whole Grindhouse experience, where you're watching a movie with reels missing and it's sort of exciting and there's good stuff in it, but you're never going to see part 2 because they never made it, because there was no money or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the charm of watching a movie like this. That's why they made Planet Terror. That's why they made Sin City. That's why they made it. Has
Mm-hmm.
that kind of feel like you're falling into the middle of a movie, but you don't get a payoff because that reel is missing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of this. It's like that next movie's just missing. But we did get like the trailer. So the trailer is the next movie. Be happy with that. That's it. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. Where in the trailer for the next movie, Michelle Rodriguez has her eye back.
Yes. She's probably cloned.
Oh, good point. Yeah. Good point. This is a great sort of, it's a well edited sort of climax to the movie, because you've got multiple sort of, you're following Michelle Rodriguez, you're following Machete, and you're cutting back and forth, and a lot of times that can get confusing in the hands of a filmmaker who's not as sort of skilled. But here everything fits together. You're aware of where everybody is in the space and how and why things are happening.
Yes, it's kind of like Planet Terror was his passion project. This is a commercial result of it.
Yeah.
And it didn't pan out. That's kind of how it feels. And that's a shame. So if you're going to watch this movie, make sure you watch Planet Terror first, so you understand what Grindhouse is, right? So you understand what they're trying to accomplish here. And once you grasp that, then it's just a fun movie to watch. Then it's enjoyable, and you can enjoy Mel because he's great in it. He's just the ultimate Bond villain.
Yeah,
and his calling.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you this, Seiko. I know he had sort of, he had played around with, the anti-hero in that movie Payback, where he played Parker. Where in the movie I think they called him Porter. But do you think that it took what happened in his personal life and the hit his career took to do a role like this?
Yes.
Or do you think he would have eventually went down this road anyway?
Did this because his producing and directing days were almost over. I mean, of course, he did Hacksaw Ridge, which was, critically acclaimed. But as a producer, to get money off the ground, you need money.
Yeah.
Doors are closed. So he's just doing what's still available. That's the reality of it. So, and people say, well, Mel wasn't never punished Mel was never blah, blah, blah. Mel was forgiven. No, he wasn't. That's the reality of it.
But he's, like you said, he's really good in these types of roles. He also did another recent movie.
He was in Expendables 2, and he was the bad guy in Expendables 2, and he's probably my favorite villain from the Expendables movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably really close between him and Van Damme.
Sure.
And then also he did
he's in 3. Van Damme is in 2. I'm sorry. Yeah. No, it's Van Damme is a lovable villain.
Yeah.
Whereas Mel in 3 is just intense and dangerous and scary.
Yeah. Whereas in 2, Van Damme kind of you can see he's chewing a little bit. He's and then he also did that movie recently with Frank Grillo, where it was like the video game concept, where Frank Grillo kept resetting, and that was another Mel playing the bad guy.
It was one scene, basically 1 or 2 scenes. I mean, it was one of those movies where he was just but it's a great Grillo vehicle.
Yeah, it's real interesting though, Seiko, to see the sort of idea that like with certain stars we wouldn't have gotten this movie or this performance if
If they
something in their
hadn't fallen
personal
from
life.
grace.
Yeah, exactly. Man,
Good.
what a fun movie. And as I was watching, I was like, man, I haven't seen this since I saw it at the drive-in. I'm definitely gonna not wait another 9 years to watch this movie again.
No, me neither. I might not even wait another 9 days. I mean, this was amazing. This was so much fun.
Yeah. Although it is kind of weird seeing the little girl from Spy Kids all grown up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little awkward.
It was especially for like Rodriguez. It's like, man, you worked with her when she was a kid, and now you've got her wearing assless chaps. Like, I mean, but you're right. I mean,
well, it is. Isn't that like basically just Hollywood in a nutshell?
Yeah, for the most part. But I think you nailed it where you said he knows how to sort of capture, women that way.
He knows what's interesting about a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And he brings out a lot of interesting facets to the actresses he works with. Because basically before this, I was not very enthusiastic about, the former Mrs. Johnny Depp.
Okay, yeah.
But watching her in this movie, it's like, oh, okay, so you did bring something to the table.
Yeah. I'd say there's two movies that I've enjoyed her in. This one, of course, and then also the Nick Cage movie Drive Angry. I don't know if you've ever seen
Oh,
that
sure.
one,
Yeah.
which is another Drive Angry is a grindhouse movie.
It is. Nick Cage is just a grindhouse movie in itself.
Yeah, but I mean, the concept of Drive Angry is absurd. He's escapes hell to get vengeance for his dead daughter. I mean, no explanation given. He just drives out of hell.
Oh, he drives angry.
Yeah, but
it's basically The Crow, but without the soul.
Yeah. But those are the two movies I think Amber Heard turned in good performances.
Yeah, and she was also good in Everybody Loves Mandy Lane.
Okay,
she was like a psychopath in that.
Oh yeah, you know what else? And I own this on DVD. I've watched it once, and it was out of my loyalty to him that I did it. But she was also in John Carpenter's last film, The Ward.
Yes, The Ward.
Yeah,
yes.
Which is
she actually demanded John Carpenter direct it.
Yeah, I guess.
Which was okay.
Yeah, anytime John Carpenter gets a paycheck, I'm happy.
It doesn't completely redeem that woman, but I appreciate her for that. Anyway, so that kind of wraps up Machete Kills. Thank you so much for doing this with me, Craig. It was just amazing.
You're very welcome.
I'm so happy you made me watch this movie.
I'm glad. Because like I said, I wasn't sure where this was going to go when I threw this title out there for us to cover on this
you
season.
Never know. So I mean, Doug, I'm sure thinks, The Patriot, it's my favorite movie. It made me get into history. I love that movie, and I've watched it, and you'll just have to listen to that episode to get my feelings on that one. But let's say, I have a different take. Anywho, so Greg, thanks so much for joining us on a Mel Gibson podcast. We always love you on this show. So what's next for you?
Oh, goodness. More network shows.
More network shows. Yes, well, we have our own little plans cooking up, don't we?
Yeah. And aside from that, we've talked about John Carpenter a little bit. Around Halloween, I put out a real quick 3-song EP that was sort of inspired by John Carpenter, among others.
Yes, I listened to that. That was amazing.
Yeah, well, it was a fun little project. I gave myself a week to come up with as much music as I could, and I think it turned out really, 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 really well. I'm really happy with it. And aside from that, and the podcasting, I'm working on my next sort of full-length instrumental music album, which should be coming out in 2023. So
can't wait for that one.
Been working on it a long time, Seiko. So I always appreciate being invited on this show. Podcasting is a tough beast, man, and you've got the hard part. I get the easy part. I get to come in as a guest and say what I need to, but now you've got to go
and tell us what movie to watch.
Yeah, now you've got to do all the hard work. So I always appreciate, and this isn't an elitist thing or anything, but people that don't podcast don't, I think, understand the amount of work that goes into producing a podcast that's worth listening to. And Seiko, you're doing it.
Well, you're welcome any day. Thanks a lot.
All right, take care.
Take care.